Could the US and Canada form an economic union? It sounds like a bold idea, but recently there's been some interesting talk about this possibility. President Donald Trump recently made headlines by discussing the idea of annexing Canada. But beyond the headlines, is there a deeper conversation happening? Let's take a look at what was said.
I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada. Why are we paying $200 billion a year, essentially in subsidy to Canada? And look, we're not that rich right now. We owe $36 trillion. That's because we let all these nations take advantage of us. Same thing, like $200 billion with Canada. We owe 300. We have a deficit with Mexico of $350 billion.
I don't think there's any plans to invade Canada. Really, what you're seeing is a reassertion of American leadership in the Western Hemisphere, from the Arctic all the way down to the Panama Canal. America has avoided our own hemisphere, where we have the energy, the food, and the critical minerals for way too long, and you're seeing a reassertion of President Trump's leadership.
Okay, that was NSA Michael Waltz. Also, you heard from President Trump pointing out the imbalance between our overseas partners. The U.S. has been spending a lot of money.
Now, while that may sound extreme, business leader Kevin O'Leary had a different take on the situation. He suggested that this might actually be the beginning of negotiations for an economic union between the U.S. and Canada.
And we're not getting a lot in return. That's the president's position. Let's find out from O'Leary Ventures chairman, he's Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, what he thinks about the president, Kevin. He's about to sign 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum and reciprocal tariffs. What do you make of all this?
Well, those are two different baskets. Obviously, the one that people are talking about quite a bit tonight is India. They've got certain products, services, and different sectors up to 23%. Now we're going to have reciprocal tariffs in the U.S. against them. Modi will immediately fly to Washington. The negotiations will begin. It's the same everywhere. The Canadian situation is unique. Almost the entire $200 million deficit that the president's talking about comes from one single source. That's energy coming out of Irving refineries on the East Coast down to Boston. And all of that oil, 4.3 million barrels a day, coming out of Alberta into the West. And so that's the most inexpensive oil the U.S. imports. That's why he only put a 10% tariff on it. But it's the beginning of a giant negotiation. Aluminum, 70% of aluminum that comes in the U.S. is made in Canada for one singular reason. The Canadians have all the power. Aluminum requires electricity. We don't have any grid left for electricity. So all of this, to me, if you separate the signal from the noise, forget the noise. The signal is, let's get an economic union together. The Canadians aren't going to sell the country. That's not really on the table. What is on the table that now 43% of Canadians want to explore more of, forget all these tariffs. Let's join the two economies, become a behemoth, common currency perhaps.
Now think about that for a second. An economic union between the U.S. and Canada. Could it work? Could it benefit both economies? It's an idea worth exploring, and in some ways it could be a game changer. But for now, let's shift our focus back to the current real estate market in Canada. With new tariffs in place and economic uncertainty growing, how will this impact home prices, buyers, and sellers? Let's dive in. Now let's talk about something that could have a massive impact on Canada's economy, potential U.S. tariffs. If these tariffs become a reality, we could see serious consequences across multiple sectors, including real estate. Trade between Canada and the U.S. is crucial. Canada exports billions of dollars worth of goods to the U.S., from raw materials to automobiles and technology. If tariffs are imposed, the cost of doing business will rise. Companies may cut jobs, and that could push our economy closer to a slowdown or even a recession. For the real estate market, this is a big deal. Here's why. Higher costs for goods mean home construction gets more expensive. Builders may delay projects or pass higher costs to buyers. Job losses lead to fewer people qualifying for mortgages, reducing housing demand. Investors may hold back, waiting to see where the economy is headed, slowing down sales activity. If tariffs hit hard, we could see declining home prices, more sellers struggling to find buyers, and an overall shift in the market. First, unemployment. When people lose their jobs, they stop spending, and that includes buying homes. Right now, Canada's unemployment rate is already concerning, and Ontario, especially, is seeing job losses in key sectors. Now, let's look at the unemployment situation in Canada, and more importantly in Ontario, where the numbers are even higher. From the graph, we can conclude that unemployment rates for Canada is still on high level. As you can see, the unemployment rate in Ontario is higher than the national average, One of the main reasons for this is the province's reliance on manufacturing. Ontario is home to a huge number of factories producing everything from automobiles to steel, machinery, and consumer goods. And here's the problem. If the U.S. imposes tariffs, Ontario could be hit the hardest. Why? Because many of these manufacturing businesses depend on exports to the U.S. If trade barriers go up, companies may face higher costs, lower demand, and ultimately, job cuts. Fewer jobs mean fewer people qualifying for mortgages, less spending in the housing market, and potentially more financial stress for homeowners. If this trend continues, it could have a ripple effect on real estate, leading to more forced sales and price corrections. This is why it's so important to pay attention to both the job market and potential trade policies, because they directly affect the real estate market and overall economic stability. Now, let's talk about another key indicator for the real estate market: mortgage delinquencies. When homeowners start missing payments, it's a sign that financial stress is increasing, and if this trend continues, it can lead to more forced sales and declining home prices. This chart from CMHC's analysis gives us a clear picture of what's happening. As you can see, mortgage arrears rates are expected to increase across Canada, but Toronto is projected to be hit the hardest. According to CMHC's modeling, Toronto could reach mortgage arrears levels that we haven't seen since 2012. This is a major red flag because it suggests that more homeowners will struggle to keep up with their mortgage payments, especially if interest rates stay high or the economy slows down further. If this forecast plays out, we could see an increase in distressed home sales, which would put downward pressure on home prices. For buyers, this might create opportunities, but for sellers and investors, it's something to watch closely. There's a lot happening in the economy right now, and as we've discussed, potential U.S. tariffs, rising unemployment, and increasing mortgage delinquencies could all have a major impact on the Canadian real estate market. I was going to go over the latest market statistics for Kitchener-Waterloo, but I want to dive deeper into the numbers. So I'll be covering that in my next video. Make sure to stay tuned. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. What do you think about the idea of an economic union between Canada and the US? Do you see it as a good opportunity, or do you think it would create more problems? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more updates on real estate and the economy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.